So this evening, we're here for a workshop. I will add, we knew that Council Chair Pelletier was gonna be unable to attend tonight's, meeting. I didn't know if you all wanted to determine who you'd like to run this part of the workshop, or if you'd like me to just run through them.
I'd like to move to select Councilor Trumbull as to act as Chair Pro Tem during the temporary absence of Council Chair Pelletier.
Second.
Exercise all powers, all power. And the Council Chair during this meeting.
Second.
So no doubt.
Parks and Rec.
Yes. Many of you may be aware, about a year ago, we actually completed a, Parks and Rec Center and Sawyer Arena feasibility plan. Initially, this was identified as an opportunity in the comprehensive planning process. That process also confirmed, the work we had done through our master plan. We undertook this separate, feasibility study, to look at what any potential, project should or should not look like. I did provide a link to that final report. Part of that study obviously reviewed the existing conditions. There are a number of, physical issues associated both with Sawyer Arena and, the current Parks and Rec Center. One of the primary things that we knew going in is that Sawyer Arena had most 4 years left in it, or it would have to be rebuilt. So the study identified a number of concepts, recommendation. It did some projected capital and operating costs, as well as potential implementation and phasing. Obviously, a project of this size, if it were to go forward, would require, approval of the voters. So in order for the city to properly plan for our future needs, either for a consolidated facility or investment in our existing facility, we'd really like to begin to move this, discussion forward. For those of you who may recall, when we looked at, phasing in and replacing the Bangor Auditorium, the city council actually established a special committee, which is allowed under ordinance. And our recommendation is that the council consider establishing a special committee to review the Parks and Rec Center feasibility study and to report back to the city council on next steps. It's laid out in the ordinance, the provisions, that we have to identify. So we did draft, sort of an overview of the purpose, duties, composition, manner of appointment, term of existence, et cetera, for your discussion and consideration. The bigger issue becomes that we need to make a determination. Are we going to proceed with a potential plan like this? If not, we need to go back to our existing facilities and develop a plan B. So in order to ensure, that this project remains on track, or this decision for the council remains on track, the recommendation would be that the special committee would deliver to the council no later than July 10th, their feedback and thoughts. That would allow you all adequate time and to maybe or potentially place a question on the ballot for consideration in November. So just wanted to bring this forward and get folks' feedback, thoughts on proceeding this way. Or in any alternatives folks may have.
Council Fournier.
Should there be city council members on this, or should we not?
Totally up to you all. We've done it both ways. We've had citizen appointed, we've had some, I think the arena committee, remember in the arena, there were like 3 or 4 subsets too. This is one committee, certainly obvious, open to putting a counselor on this committee as well.
Council Leonard.
Regardless if we want to have a counselor on this committee or not, I think we should at least have one member of the council to attend these meetings, just so they're up to date on them. So regardless of where we want to go, we should identify that single counselor at the very least.
Like a liaison to the committee.
Council Dash.
So it says here, it'll be 9 members, and then the council can nominate up to 2 individuals to serve the committee. Who will be choosing the other 7?
Each counselor can nominate. So if between you, if you could nominate 18 individuals, and then as a group, you could look to see what skill set
Okay.
or what particular portion of the population to make sure that we've got really good representation among a 9-member board. And I'm not gonna lie, I picked the number.
Sure, but it'll be council that ends up approving the full slate.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
Council Dean?
A question on the longevity of Sawyer Arena, you said 4 years, but that was 2 years ago?
No, last year it was 5 years.
Oh,
So,
So it really.
now
is
we're at 4.
at 4 years.
Correct. Correct.
Council Leonard?
I do have a question for, Mr. Willett, if he's, able to come up. Yeah, are there any potential individuals that you might recommend to, put on this, committee?
Certainly when the council decides to, Tracy Willett, Parks and Recreation Director, if indeed, and the council moves forward with this and they're interested in feedback from staff for potential candidates for this committee, we certainly can share that with you all.
I would definitely, love if you,
Yeah, for
could
sure.
do some homework
Yeah.
and just so that by the time we finalize this,
no,
we
for
already
sure.
have some names to choose. from.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Happy to
sir.
do that.
It sounds like a good plan moving forward to me. Thanks for clarification. I didn't understand the 2 members from the council, so that
Correct.
seems to make sense. I think it would make sense to have at least 1 or 2 councilors on, probably 1 council, I would think would be good as part of the committee, but,
Okay.
we could decide that with all the
Okay.
people.
So would you like us to move forward with an order that would allow 1 counselor and that the council will appoint 8 other members?
So is
Does that
what
feel-
people think?
Okay.
Yeah.
Any objection to that? All right. Anything else on this item?
So will that go at the next council meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
we will draft a council order for the next meeting, which will establish this special committee. And we will lay out the purpose
So
The
we'll have to
appointment.
charge.
and the
So
term.
they, I mean, I think everybody's fine with the findings of that group. So
Yeah.
what is the committee gonna determine? What are we asking them to do?
So we're asking them to review all of the plans. Is this, and to actually look at the
Cause I'm not
findings.
sold on the location personally, so that's one of the,
Okay, well, that horse has sort of left the barn.
Okay. well, we never decided on the location.
Well, the recommendation was that it be on Griffin.
Right, but that, I mean, so I mean, what's the
Yeah.
committee left to do then? If they,
Well, to review the operating of the Capitol, does the physical layout still represent the needs of the community?
Right.
Would they recommend a phased approach? Is there any opportunity for private fundraising?
Mhm.
So for example, when we did the Cross Center, we had the opportunity to do naming rights. Is that a potential
Right.
opportunity here? Are there other organizations in the city that may benefit from this, that we may be able to partner with? And have those kinds of conversations, to be able to come forward with a fully fleshed out plan. The recommendation is we do A in year 1, and this is all of the ancillary money that we could pursue.
maybe you could just briefly look at the location. I've heard a lot of comments from people that, I mean, you've only got 1 shot at it. That might not be the ideal location for that, so,
Certainly.
all right. Anything else on there? Council Fornia?
Timeline for council members to submit the 2 names?
Yep, so based on this, we'll work, Tracy and I have already had some initial conversations to Councilor Leonard's point of members of the community who are users, who have history, who may have a different perspective. Because what we want to make sure of is that all potential users are represented as part of this process. So Tracy and I can start pulling that list together.
Sure.
And get it out so you can start thinking about who else. And I will say, I think it's gonna be really important that we make sure that we're representative of users. But I know when we did the arena, it was really good to have industry-specific individuals. So somebody who has a really good background in finance, for example. Somebody who has a construction background. We found that to be very helpful because a group of individuals who are users and talking about how you might phase something really don't understand the intricacies at times of construction. So what they may be proposing may not actually be able to be done in that sequence or method. So I think it's going to be really helpful to lay that out.
Council Dean?
These members of the committee are
Yep.
all to be Bangor?
We could do all
Residents
Bangor
or
residents,
Not
or we could,
necessarily.
I think we should emphasize Bangor residents. It is Bangor residents who will be potentially, responsible for saying, yes, I agree with moving forward with this or not. So, those are the voters. I will say that there may be times where some of the specialties you may not be able to find living in Bangor, but I would like to think we could.
Okay.
So I
Yes.
think we just really need to, there's a time crunch here,
Yep,
July 10.
yep,
And we gotta bring people up to speed.
yep.
So it's important for us to get these names.
Yep.
As soon as you guys.
Council Leonard?
Are there any counselors right now who'd be willing to volunteer their names right now? We don't have to decide right now, but if we could probably settle some of this if there are some counselors who are willing to step forward right now.
Even with names of people or?
No, no,
people-
no, no,
Councils that
but-
want to serve.
Individual
Oh,
councils.
okay, yeah.
I would be willing.
If no one else wants to, I know we're missing some counselors, but I'll throw my hat in there as well if need be.
Okay, so yeah, we'll let the other three
Okay,
know about this opportunity.
okay.
Right.
And we'll have a item on the next city council agenda.
Yeah, maybe let everybody know about, come up with a couple of
Yeah.
things too. I've got a couple of mine, I'll check with them.
Okay.
Right,
Thank you all.
thanks.
Thank you.
Tracy.
Okay. We'll get next.
State legislative update?
Mhm.
All right, we've actually included, a schedule of all of the hearings, for this week that are happening at the legislature. The city are members of both the Legislative Policy Committee of Maine Municipal, as well as the Maine Service Center Coalition and the Mayor Coalitions. And all of these associations are codifying positions on behalf of municipal memberships. Earlier this week, the Mayor's Coalition voted last week to submit testimony in support of LD 347, which is an act to provide qualifying municipalities a percentage of adult use cannabis sales tax and excise tax revenue. And basically what it would do is it would return a portion of those taxes collected by the state on adult use cannabis sites, and would return it in a proportionate manner to the communities in which the locations are located. I think overall, when adult use cannabis tax came into play, that was a new revenue source that was wholly absorbed at the state level. None of that money trickles down to local governments. Cannabis use tax, for example, is not part of the revenue sharing pool, which is how the state of Maine shares those broad-based taxes back with the municipalities. So the Mayor's Coalition went ahead and is planning to submit testimony in support of that. I also believe that the city should consider supporting this LD as well. It is just one way in which we can return some of those broad-based taxes back to the municipality and lessen the burden to our property taxpayers. What's been clear through all of these groups that are looking at legislative items is it's going to be a very difficult session in Augusta, and no different than it's likely going to be here. So being very strategic with the number of bills that we support, and really trying to hone in on those that we maybe have the best opportunity of moving the needle on, because where do you want to expend your political capital? If you expend your political capital on 30 things that have limited chance of passing, are we better off to more focus and be strategic about which ones? And that's kind of where those three groups have wound up, as kind of trying to be far more targeted in their approach. So that's why the one item that comes forward is LD 347 in support of that bill, to return some of those cannabis tax funds back to the city so that we can reduce the burden on our property taxpayers. And I didn't know, I included the whole list of bills in case there were any others that folks had interest or wanted more information on.
Council Beck?
LD 349, an act to repeal the laws that allow same-day voter registration. That's something that a lot of voters, like to have access to. Like being what it is and be able to register to vote the same day and exercise their right. I would think that, I don't know how that would affect the clerk. I guess there's a lot of questions there from a municipal level. From a personal level, I hate to see it go away, but as a city, I don't know what our position would be, but that's something of interest.
I can have the city clerk pull together some information to share with you all.
Sure.
I'm not sure. I believe it's likely the Municipal Clerks Association. I'm not sure what position they're taking on it. So I
Sure.
wouldn't even hesitate to guess.
Sure. I mean, I'm thinking, if we hear back on, like, we find out that only 3 or 4 Bangor voters are affected each year.
No, we have hundreds.
Yeah.
That vote.
We have hundreds.
They
that
register the same
register
day?
same day.
Yeah,
Hundreds.
so that's affecting a lot of our
It,
citizens.
it does. Yep.
Council Lemon?
There's also, another, LD that, it just recently had, a number attached to it, LD 487. It's hopefully third time's the charm. This is gonna be a repeat of, the passenger rail study initiative. It's titled, Resolve Directing the Northern New England Passenger Rail Authority to apply for federal funding for the purpose of identifying the rail corridor connecting Portland to Orono as an intercity passenger rail corridor. This is the last time we can put a bill like this forward, just because, this is the last
Right.
time that we can apply for those bipartisan, infrastructure, funds. So,
Okay.
there's a lot of coordinating behind the scenes to work with this, and I think a lot of the misconceptions have been answered to some of the people that had a lot of repeated questions over the years. If the council still feels appropriate with this, this is the same exact bill, just the name and number has changed regarding how we supported this in the past unanimously. So unless anyone has an issue with this, it's gonna be the same thing we supported the last 2 times.
I'll pull up the prior testimony as well as pull the bill. Because that bill hadn't been printed,
It just happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
or it actually hadn't been scheduled for hearing, I should say.
How do we do, so if we want to support that, what we have?
I
to-
will
you can send an
email, yep,
around.
yep, we'll do that, but I guess I'm just trying to focus on the hearings for the week
Right.
coming up. And I'd really like to have a sense of, do you want to support LD 347? Which is the one I brought forward.
And anybody opposed to that? One I just saw, I was trying to think of the one earlier, there's a bill in for, bond issues for help, treatment plants to
Okay, yes, we would
to
support
dry
that.
out this, dry the sludge.
Dry the
so
sludge.
If we go into landfills,
Okay,
and they talked about 5. I think Bangor would be one of the 5 that would.
oh, I'm
qualify.
sure we would be,
And it'd be like a matching grant.
okay.
So,
We'll look for that one too. And I will have the city clerk pull some information for LD 349, so we can circle that around. And I will pull the past testimony on passenger rail.
Council Beck?
And there was also that bill that Bulldozer put in about the cold storage, the bond. Can you
Yeah.
find out more about that?
I have not yet, I have not yet. Our airport director is, just returned from vacation,
Okay,
first day back. Or maybe he may even be back tomorrow, so,
if he doesn't get sick.
yes, correct, correct. And we did, development director Ann Krieg and I spoke about that too. Even if it isn't that deep freeze storage, is it an opportunity to supplement kind of the discussions we're having around the commercial kitchen? Because I think back then, they were really looking for, this came up, I'm gonna say 8 or 10 years ago. And they were really looking for that flash freeze capacity. And if that isn't really the need now, do we still have a need, especially as it relates to connecting with the commercial kitchen? Or potentially a connection to our foreign trade zone? Because a lot of our seafood products in Maine get shipped overseas, so utilizing our foreign trade zone would be helpful, so.
Well, not to get us off track on the legislation, but when we last talked about the commercial kitchen.
Yes,
They were gonna have to demolish the current
Yes.
building and start new.
yes,
And that's why I mentioned,
correct.
does it make, do we need to look at a new location closer
And
to
they,
airport?
and they are looking
Where the
at that.
commercial
Yep,
kitchen, where the
they've
cold
started to
storage.
look at all of that.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, you got some comment on the same day?
Oh, there you go.
Lisa Goodwin, City Clerk. LD 349 actually had a public hearing today. So if the council is in support of LD 349 or against, I can put some written testimony in. I personally am against it because I think it's going to disenfranchise the voters. And we have over 1,000 people on a big election that come in on election day. People move. And sorry, I'm kind of out of breath. I've got a cold and I can't.
Oh,
So I am a little winded. So I believe the Clerks Association did put in a testimony against this bill because it's not good for the voters.
Okay. So if you're all amenable, we'll have Lisa go ahead and draft some testimony.
Any
An
objections
opposition?
to that? Okay,
Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
anything else in legislation?
Good if you all are.
Anybody else, anything on legislation? Okay,
And is it helpful to just kind of do the week up in advance?
I think so, yeah, be
Just
kind of
because
crazy going.
it is kind of, at some point, there's gonna be a huge onslaught. I know that's coming, so,
Updates?
yeah. Just a couple of quick updates. I hope folks saw on the weekly schedule that the Bangor High Junior ROTC will be holding a USS Maine Memorial event in Davenport Park on Saturday at noon. We have been, I'm not sure if you all got the invitations from Penquist, but Penquist has announced both their open house and their ribbon cutting for Teresa's Place this month. So, Yes.
When is that?
the open
I
house,
didn't
the open house is, you haven't looked at the email. Huh? We've clarified that by your arrival time this evening. Tough crowd, I know. The open house, I believe, is February 20th and the ribbon cutting is February 24th.
Yes, it's the 24th at 11:30, so ribbon cutting.
And then the last item is just sort of a heads up for a proposal and a discussion that we have coming forward from our public health department, either at a committee or a council workshop. As many of you may know, Health Equity Alliance's syringe service program, their certification was revoked mid-January. I believe they do have a 30-day appeal period. I believe their appeal period expires at the end of this week. We have not been made aware of whether or not they plan to submit an appeal or not. In the meantime, Wabanaki Public Health has been filling that void in our community on a very temporary basis. Public Health Director and I have been in contact with Wabanaki, the city and Wabanaki realized that this is not sustainable. It was meant to just be a stopgap measure. Since that revocation of HEAL certification, Public Health has been researching who else can step into that space. If HEAL is truly not able to fulfill that role. We were looking at folks who had a proven history of operating bricks and mortar exchanges, and has proven and trusted relationships within the community. Unfortunately, there are just a limited number of providers in this space. So I believe it's in the best interest of our city, if the city stepped into this role. And that our public health department considered becoming a syringe service provider, and not, looking, like I said, we've looked for other options. This is similar to what occurs in Portland. But I didn't want you to be surprised to see that coming up on an agenda for discussion purposes.
Council Leonard?
And Jen, you don't have to come up right now, but I would like to just have an overview of like how this is going to impact the health department of the city,
Yeah.
and just like what the processes to include that into the city's responsibilities. But obviously, unless then someone else wants Jen to come up, I'm okay with that.
And that's part of the part of the entire proposal that we're gonna bring forward for you all to discuss.
Council Fawnin?
Okay.
Good.
I was just gonna mention what Councilor Leonard what Councilor Leonard said, but also the funding. How are we gonna do that?
Correct. And that's part of that.
Yeah, I figured as much.
Council Beck?
My question was in the same vein. I'm assuming that opioid settlement funds would be a part of that discussion.
And what's the status of the needle pickup? Was that with Heal as well?
So that was with HEAL, and we've actually been working with Wabanaki Public Health to fulfill that.
Okay.
And part of this discussion becomes, depending on if the city were to move forward and become the syringe service provider, we would look at transitioning some of that work back, not all of it, but some of it. We have a good relationship with Wabanaki and it's working in our community, so.
Council Dean?
And the location, is that
We've-
to be determined?
Yeah, we've not established any of that. Jen has has worked with Portland Public Health. She's actually visited their syringe service program, got their budget information. We know that Maine CDC provides a certain amount of funding to HEAL for syringe services because syringe service program services. So obviously a new provider would be eligible for those funds. There are also funds, I believe, waiting at the Maine Recovery Council through the state opioid settlements that potentially could be utilized. And then lastly, obviously, the city has its own opioid settlement funds, if that becomes a priority for the city council.
Anything else on the needles? Anything else?
No,
That's it?
that's it.
All right, I guess we're adjourned till 7 o'clock.